You already know something has shifted. You can feel it deep inside that quiet place you retreated to when they broke you open and walked away like you were nothing. Something has changed, not in you, though you have changed. Something has changed in them. And somewhere beneath the exhaustion, beneath the grief, beneath the years of questioning your own sanity and wondering why someone who claimed to love you could treat you like a disposable object, somewhere beneath all of that, a part of you has been waiting for this moment. Not out of bitterness, not out of revenge, but out of something older and deeper and more certain than either of those things. You have been waiting because you always knew the truth. You always knew who they really were. And now, finally, the universe is catching up. This is not a coincidence that you are here right now. The person who is watching this video has survived something that most people cannot even comprehend from the outside. You were not just lied to. You were systematically dismantled. You were made to question your memories, your emotions, your worth, your perception of reality itself. You gave someone your trust, your vulnerability, the sacred interior of who you are, and they used it as ammunition. They turned your love into leverage. They turned your wounds into weapons. And when there was nothing left to extract from you, they discarded you like you had never mattered at all. And then, and this is the part that cuts the deepest, they moved on. They smiled. They charmed new people. They told a new story in which they were the victim and you were the villain. And you sat alone in the wreckage, wondering how someone capable of that level of cruelty could seem so completely untouched. But here is what you need to understand before we go any further. Untouched is not the same as unaffected. Smiling is not the same as healed. Moving on is not the same as being free. And the universe does not send its invoices on a schedule that humans can track with their wounded eyes. If this is landing somewhere real inside you, if you feel that ache of recognition right now, then you are exactly where you are supposed to be. And I need you to do something before we go deeper into what I'm about to show you. I need you to subscribe to this channel right now. Not because of an algorithm, not because of numbers, but because what is shared here is not content. It is a lifeline. Every single day, people who have survived exactly what you survived come to this channel and find the language for what happened to them. They find the mirror they were denied. They find the truth that was stolen from them. When you subscribe, you are not just clicking a button. You are declaring to yourself that your healing matters. You are joining a community of people who are waking up, rising up, and reclaiming the power that was taken from them. So, subscribe now. Turn on notifications, and stay with me because what I'm about to tell you is going to change how you see everything. Now let us talk about what is actually happening. There is a law that operates beneath the surface of every human interaction. It does not care about charm. It does not bend for charisma. It cannot be manipulated with words or seduced with a performance. It is older than any court system, older than any religion, older than the very concept of justice itself, and it is extraordinarily patient. It has been working in silence since long before you knew to look for it. It has been building its case, cataloging every wound inflicted, every lie spoken, every soul diminished for sport. And at a certain point, a point that cannot be predicted or forced or rushed, it begins to deliver. The narcissist who betrayed you is not exempt from this law. No matter how invincible they appeared, no matter how easily they seemed to glide through life while you were rebuilding yourself from pieces, no matter how many new people fell for their charm, or how convincingly they played the innocent, the law does not care about their performance. It only cares about what is real, and what is real has been accumulating inside them for longer than you know. Here is the first sign. Watch carefully because it does not announce itself loudly. They are losing the ability to maintain the mask. You have to understand what a narcissist's life actually is beneath the surface they project. It is not the confident, effortless existence it appears to be from the outside. It is an exhausting, relentless, all-consuming performance. Every single day, the narcissist wakes up and must construct a version of themselves to show the world. A version that covers the hollow, terrified, deeply fragmented reality underneath. They have been doing this since childhood. They built the mask so early and wore it so consistently that most of them genuinely cannot tell where the performance ends and the person begins. But the mask has a cost. And that cost compounds over time with brutal arithmetic. Every relationship they destroy leaves a scar on the mask. Every person who eventually sees through them. Every friend who quietly disappears. Every partner who finally walks away. Every colleague who slowly stops trusting them. Each departure is a crack. Not a wound they process. Not a grief they move through. A crack in the structural integrity of the false self they depend on for survival. And here's the thing about cracks. They spread. When karma begins to move, you will notice that the narcissist's performance starts to falter in ways that cannot be hidden anymore. The stories they tell start to contradict each other. The charm feels strained rather than effortless. The mask slips in public, a flash of rage where there should be patience, a coldness where there should be warmth, a cruelty that leaks through at a moment that cannot be explained away or covered with a smile. People who once defended them start to go quiet. Allies begin to drift. The social architecture they spent years constructing begins to develop visible fractures. You might not see this directly. You might hear about it secondhand through someone who knows someone. You might notice it in the strange desperation of a late-night message that arrives without warning after months of silence. You might sense it in the way they suddenly need to be visible, posting compulsively, performing publicly, over-claiming and over-explaining in ways that feel less like confidence and more like panic. Confidence does not need an audience at midnight. Confidence does not need to remind people how well it is doing. What you are watching when you see that behavior is not strength. It is the beginning of structural collapse. And here is the psychological truth that most people miss. The narcissist never actually processes the people they harm. They do not grieve relationships the way you do. They warehouse them. They archive them in a part of their psyche that they have spent their entire lives refusing to look at. But warehouses have weight limits. And after enough betrayals, enough destructions, enough discarded humans stacked on top of each other, the floor starts to give way. The past starts to leak. And the narcissist, who once moved through the world with such apparent ease, begins to feel hunted by a version of themselves they cannot outrun. No matter how fast they move, how many people they charm, or how confidently they smile, they are losing the mask, and the world is beginning to see what was underneath it all along. Let that sit for a moment. Now, the second sign, and this one is quieter, more internal, more devastating in its own way. They are becoming a prisoner of the emptiness they always had but could never feel. One of the most disorienting things about recovering from narcissistic abuse is the moment you realize that the person who destroyed you was never actually capable of the connection you thought you were building. The love bombing, the intimacy, the moments that felt so real and so rare and so precious. None of it was what you believed it to be. It was a simulation, a masterful, devastating simulation, because the narcissist, beneath all their bravado and cruelty and performance, is fundamentally and profoundly empty. Not metaphorically empty, structurally empty. There is a void at their core where authentic self-awareness, genuine empathy, and real emotional connection are supposed to exist. And there is nothing there, just a cold, echoing hollow that they have spent their entire existence trying to fill from the outside. And for a long time, they could new supply, new admiration, new sources of validation, new people to reflect back the image of themselves they needed to survive. The cycle of idealize, devalue, discard kept moving forward, and the emptiness stayed manageable. Painful? Yes, but manageable. But karma does not allow this cycle to continue indefinitely. At a certain point, the supply dries up. Not all at once. Gradually, the way water table drops during a drought, leaving wells dry and soil cracked and life struggling to find enough moisture just to survive. People grow tired of the performance. The new admirers realize who they are dealing with and pull away. The pool of available supply shrinks. And as the external validation begins to thin out, the internal void begins to expand, rushing in to fill every available space with a heavy, suffocating silence. This is the moment they begin to experience the true nature of their own internal reality. They can no longer distract themselves with the thrill of the new chase or the warmth of fresh admiration, because the shiny new things lose their luster faster. Now the people they charm begin to see through the act sooner. And every time the cycle repeats, the high gets shorter and the crash gets harder, plunging them deeper into a quiet, unrelenting despair that they have no internal resources to navigate. They do not know how to sit with themselves because there is nothing there to sit with. They do not know how to soothe their own pain because they have spent a lifetime projecting every uncomfortable feeling onto someone else. And now, as the mirrors start to crack and the supply starts to fail, they are left alone with the one thing they have been running from since the day they were born, the cold, silent, bottomless emptiness of their own true nature. They are trapped inside a fortress they built to keep out the world, only to discover too late that it is actually a prison, keeping them locked away with their own decaying spirit. That is the reality behind the smile. That is the truth behind the polished social media posts and the effortless charm. While you were doing the heavy, agonizing work of healing, while you were weeping on the bathroom floor, while you were gathering up the broken pieces of your spirit and slowly, painfully rebuilding, a life of genuine authenticity and real emotional depth. They were standing still in a cage of their own making. You grew through your pain. You expanded through your grief. You found strength you never knew you possessed on the other side of your suffering, but they ran from theirs, and because they ran, their world grew smaller and colder and more desolate with every passing year. So do not look at them with envy when you see them moving through the world. Do not let the surface fool you into thinking that they won and you lost. The universe does not operate on the timeline of human vanity. It operates on truth, and truth always claims what belongs to it. In the end, you survived the fire. And because you walked through the flames, you are forged in something real, something unbreakable, something they will never, no matter how hard they try, be able to touch or take away from you. Imperceptibly at first, and then suddenly critical. The people who used to provide the admiration start to see right through the performance. The new relationships they try to form become harder to maintain because the mask is cracking, because word travels, because something in the way they engage has grown desperate rather than magnetic. And as the supply decreases, the emptiness, that foundational primordial emptiness that was always there, begins to expand. This is when the narcissist begins to encounter themselves for the very first time. And it is certainly not a gentle meeting break, because without the constant noise of supply, without new people to charm and conquer and discard, without the intoxication of power and control to drown it all out, the silence finally arrives. And in that heavy silence, they begin to feel what they spent decades running away from. Not guilt necessarily, since their capacity for genuine guilt is extremely limited, but something adjacent to it, something much uglier, a formless dread, an awareness of their own wrongness that they cannot metabolize or explain or project away. They start to experience the emotional consequences of a life spent treating people as disposable objects, not through a healthy moral reckoning, but through a growing, suffocating isolation that follows them into every room, every relationship, and every carefully constructed performance. You have to understand what this actually feels like from the inside, to be surrounded by people and feel utterly alone, to have someone right beside you and feel nothing at all. No warmth, no genuine connection, no relief from the cold. To spend your entire existence hunting for something outside yourself that can fill the gap inside you, only to find that the gap has grown larger than anything outside can ever reach. That is the private hell of the narcissist. And karma, when it finally moves, stops allowing them to escape it. They lie awake at night, not thinking about you. Do not make that mistake, but thinking entirely about themselves, which is all they have ever been capable of doing. And those thoughts, without the distraction of new supply, without the intoxication of control, begin to turn dark and circular and inescapable. They replay moments not out of any remorse, but out of a compulsive, disturbed need to rewrite them. They revisit old wounds, not the ones they caused, but the ones they received, whether real or imagined, because blaming others is the only psychological mechanism they have ever truly developed. And that mechanism, once so effective, begins to fail them completely, because there is no one left to blame who is close enough to absorb it, because the circle has shrunk. Because even the people who stayed out of obligation or fear or habit begin to feel the heavy weight of who they are and start pulling back. The emptiness expands, the prison tightens, and the narcissist, who once made you feel like nothing, begins to experience, in their own distorted way, what nothing actually feels like. You survived that emptiness when they projected it onto you. They are only beginning to survive it now, and unlike you, they have no real emotional tools with which to do it. Do you feel that? That is not cruelty. That is not revenge. That is simply the universe maintaining its own arithmetic. Stay here with me, because the third sign is the one that most people never talk about. The one that operates so far beneath the surface that only those who have studied the psychology of this kind of person can see it clearly. But once you see it, you can never unsee it. They are haunted by you. Not in the way love haunts someone, not with warmth, but with something that genuinely frightens them. This sounds counterintuitive, I know. The narcissist discarded you. They moved on without apparent remorse. They replaced you, possibly within days. They told a story in which you were the problem. They acted as though you had never mattered at all. And here you are, still healing, still working through the wreckage, still having days where the grief rises up and surprises you with its sharpness. How could they possibly be haunted by you? Because you did something that almost no one in their lives ever does. You saw them, not the mask, but them in the intimacy of the relationship. In those moments of vulnerability that even narcissists cannot entirely prevent, you witness something real beneath the performance, and you remember it. and somewhere deep in the architecture of their psychology, they know you remember it. That knowledge does not produce shame in the way it might in a healthy person, but it produces something they are constitutionally incapable of tolerating. The sense of being known, the sense of being truly and undeniably seen by someone whose perception they could not fully control. This is why narcissists so often return not out of love, not even out of longing, in any meaningful emotional sense, but because the person who saw behind the mask holds a kind of power over them that no one else does. You are unfinished business. Not because your connection was real to them in the way it was real to you, but because you remain in their psychological landscape as an unanswered question, a witness they cannot fully discredit, a mirror they shattered but could not destroy. And when karma moves in on them, when the mask is cracking and the supply is drying up and the emptiness is expanding, they begin to think about the people they discarded, not with love, but with a desperate searching quality that they would never name and barely understand. They scroll old messages, they drive past old places, they ask mutual contacts, casual questions that are not casual at all. They watch your life from a distance, and what they see disturbs them in a way they cannot process cleanly, because you are doing something they told themselves you could never do without them. You are rebuilding. You are healing. You are becoming slowly and with enormous courage, more fully yourself than you were even before they arrived. And that your quiet becoming is more devastating to them than anything you could ever deliberately do in revenge. Because the narcissist structured the entire relationship around a specific belief that you needed them, that without their validation, their presence, their approval, you were less. That belief was their primary source of control. It was the architecture of their power over you. And watching you live well, watching you grow, watching you reclaim your voice and your dignity and your sense of self, it dismantles that belief right at the foundation. It retroactively exposes the lie they told themselves about who you were and what you needed and what they truly meant to you. They are haunted by the evidence of your survival. And their haunting is directly proportional to how fully you choose to live your life. This is why your healing is not just personal, it is cosmic. Your recovery is not just good for you. It is the instrument through which the universe delivers its most pointed and precise response to what was done to you. Every time you choose yourself over the grief they left behind. Every time you refuse to shrink back into the person their cruelty tried to make you. Every time you speak your truth, trust your instincts, and extend yourself towards something new and good and real. You are not just healing, you are participating in something much larger. You are part of the reckoning. If you have been watching this and feeling something shift inside you, a loosening, a recognition, a sense that the darkness you have been carrying has edges and therefore an end, then please, right now, subscribe to this channel, because this is not the last thing you need to hear. There are layers to this. There are truths about narcissistic abuse, about your own healing, about the psychology of control and recovery and power that we have only begun to uncover together. When you subscribe, you are saying that you are not done learning, that you are not done rising, that you refuse to let what they did to you be the final word on who you are. Hit subscribe. Share this video with someone who needs it, because there are people in your life right now who are still in the middle of what you are beginning to understand. And the kindest thing you can do for them is hand them the language they do not yet have for what is happening to them. Now, let me tell you what all three of these signs point toward. Because when you hold them together, the picture they form is extraordinary. The narcissist who betrayed you is not living the triumphant, unbothered life they wanted you to believe they were living. They are managing a slow internal erosion that is invisible to the casual observer, but unmistakable to anyone who knows what to look for. The mask is cracking, the emptiness is expanding, the haunting is deepening, and these three things together create a psychological pressure that no amount of new supply, no new performance, and no new victim can fully relieve. Because the source of that pressure is internal. It is the accumulated weight of a life lived without genuine connection, without authentic emotion, without real accountability, and without truth. And that weight does not decrease with time. It compounds, it grows denser, it becomes harder and harder to carry without it showing. You need to understand something about the nature of karma in the context of people like this. It does not always arrive as an external catastrophe, though sometimes it does. It does not always look like public exposure or dramatic consequence, though those things happen too. More often, more consistently, more precisely, and more painfully for the person receiving it. Karma arrives as an internal condition, as a life that looks fine from the outside and feels like a slow suffocation from the inside, as the inability to experience the warmth and depth and meaning that other people take completely for granted, as the slow realization impossible to fully articulate even to themselves that every relationship they have ever had was a transaction, and every transaction eventually ended in loss, and every loss has made them more alone in a way that no new relationship can ever fix. That is the sentence. That is the judgment that the universe delivers to those who make a practice of destroying others. Not fire and brimstone, not public ruin, though that may come too, but a life experienced from behind,